It's interesting mentioning water. It just reminded me of, and I wonder if you have any thoughts on this. There's a friend of mine who nearly drowned, and he was furious when he was saved. And I wondered about this sense of, as we see bits of the brain shutting down, that in something like that, in a drowning experience, where there is the possibility that you do hit that, as you said, that sense of euphoria, that sense of the loss of boundaries.
Oh, this body is filled with pain. This body is constantly filled with pain, and just being alive. I mean, you got to think about it. We got 50 trillion little workers all working. They're eating, they're creating waste. They have a job to do. They're interacting with one another. They're trying to all communicate and keep the flow going of all these magnificent systems so that they get their needs met. They get cleared out. Everybody knows what's going on. I mean, it's a masterpiece. It's busy, and it is painful when your consciousness zips down to their level of communication. And it's a slow drumming of activity inside of the body that we don't keep in our conscious awareness, because we're lifted above that to a different level of consciousness in our brain. So yes, he had left this plane, and he was down in this pain, and then his mind went up, and then you brought him back, or people brought him back, and he had to come this way in through that pain. And it's agonizing. The body life is agonizing, but our conscious minds are lifted above that level of consciousness. Otherwise, who'd want to be alive? Nobody'd want to be alive. We think our joints, ache, and how hard it is to heal after you turn 50. Try, after 60. It's like, how do we keep these beautiful cells in flow and in health with one another? You got to make an effort.
It always worried me when I read Kurt Vonnegut was told by his dentist, your teeth are only meant to last 40 years. And that tells you something. You go, oh, Kurt Vonnegut and his depressing dentists. Well,
it's true. I mean, just think about it. How long has human been living to 100? This is a new thing. Your neurons were born, and they did not sign up for 100 years. Because, how many generations back have been doing this? Very few. If some of us, none of our relatives have lived to 100. And now we're thinking we're going to go to 100 or 110 or 120 because of modern medicine, and the neurons are in all the cells. Most of them reproduce themselves, but the neurons, they don't so much. And it's like, so they got to hang on for 100 years. And they're going, I only signed up for 68. What was the average when I was born? Yeah, so we're pushing the limit, and if we don't tend to them, they're like little living creatures. If we don't tend to them and we abuse them instead, then we're giving them the message. So if you're eating well and you're sleeping well, and you've got movement going in your body to keep everybody going, you're giving them the message that I value you, I care about you. If I'm going out drinking every night, if I'm smoking God knows what, if I'm doing whatever else I'm doing, I'm giving them that message that I'm okay with abusing you, and they're going to be abused.
I wanted to get into the way that you divide up the left brain and the right brain in this book. And I suppose the way I'd like to start is, you say that one of the last things that really came back was your left brain, emotional left brain, which is where the trauma is. And the influence of trauma on the people that we become. And I wondered that, first of all, as that part of you started to come back, was there some part of you that was like, you know what, I wouldn't mind if this bit stayed away, this bit of the brain?
Actually, for me, that part did stay away. It was like wipe the slate clean, and then I started anew on the morning of the stroke or after the surgery. I started fresh. So I did not end up with all those traumatic emotional process experiences, or good ones. I remember with my left thinking brain, the day I got my PhD. It was a beautiful ceremony. My mom dressed in her PhD outfit because she was faculty there. And it was just this beautiful, tender experience between me and my mom. Well, I can remember that and recall it, but I don't have the emotion that I felt with that. And I'm willing to sacrifice the positive because of all the negative that I lost along the way. But I got rebooted with that. My thinking group of cells, they recovered old ideas, old thoughts, eventually with a lot of work and reintroduction. So these two different groups of cells, the emotion, it was gone, it got rebooted, it started fresh again. But the thinking, I got to reopen different groups of those cells.
So that to me is very interesting in terms of your initial emotional connections with. I know your mother is something of a hero to you, and which is great. And it's, but I wonder that when we read about things like Capgras syndrome, and we read about when emotional disconnect happens, and people when they're not getting that little buzz of love that comes with that. And I wondered in the same way, when that emotional connection was broken, that first experience when you were starting to communicate with people that you loved, how difficult was that?
Well, and the mother is the greatest example, because, there's nothing like mother power. We all know, mom gives you that eye and you just feel it inside of your gut, one look and she's just said a book to you. And my mother lost her mother power. I did not know what a mother was, much less who my mother was. So there was no mother power. And for me, that was very, very freeing. She wasn't happy about it at all. And as you can imagine. And so within a few months, when I'm recovering, I realized that she was pulling things on me that maybe would have worked in the past, but there was no power there for me now. And so I said to her, I'm not who I was before. I don't have that. So you and we're going to have a different relationship now if we're going to have a healthy relationship. And I remember the look on my mother's face was like, oh no, but she took it graciously, and then she changed and she became more cognitive with me and less the mother power with me, because the mother power was gone. Now, after 2 or 3 years, because she was so magnificent for me in the recovery, it was a conscious decision for me to give her mother power back, because she had earned it, and she was glad to have it back. Yeah.
Now, of course, we're halfway through, and I haven't in any way got anywhere close to what your book is actually about. So let's get there now.
It doesn't matter.
You quite early on, you mentioned the work of Jung, and you see the way the four archetypes. Yeah. You also obviously mentioned Joseph Campbell's Hero of a Thousand Faces. Now, these things are very interesting to me, because let's go into the different parts of. Should we go through each part of the brain and start maybe with the left-hand brain, the thinking section there, and just get some sense for people who don't know this work yet, this definition, the left-hand brain thinking.
Yeah. So there are, when we look at this brain, if you take the whole brain, we have thinking tissue in the left hemisphere, thinking tissue in the right hemisphere. And then you go deeper, and then you can see emotion in the left hemisphere and emotion in the right hemisphere, including the anterior cingulate gyrus here. So we have emotional tissue and thinking in each hemisphere. So if I take this and I open it up like this, in the left brain, I call character 1 left thinking. And left thinking is our rational brain that we use in communication with the external world. So it defines the boundaries of where I begin and where I end. It has language, it creates sound, it places meaning on that sound. It has motor system and motor control over parts of my body. And it, as language, a part of language is me. I am an individual. I am separate from you because of this group of cells. So I have an ego. So the whole world gets filtered through that left hemisphere through me, the individual, both emotionally from a past and a future, and the thinking of the past and the future. So the thinking tissue, our rational brain, it defines right and wrong, the social norm as I relate to the external world. What is right? What is wrong? What is good? What is bad? It loves to create order in the world. So it categorizes things, and it likes to control people, places, and things. And part of the things thing that it controls is time. So character 1 is our A-type personality that actually cares that the stapler goes back where the stapler belongs so that I can find it when I need it. Okay, so we all know that part of ourselves. Character 2 is the emotion of the left brain. And the left brain, again, the emotion of the past and the emotion of the future. So the fear of the unknown, fear of the future, and the anxiety of perfectionism, because this brain, the left hemisphere, has an expectation of what it wants. And so the emotional tissue, say, for example, it may be happy because I wanted to have a picnic today and I wanted the sun to be out. Well, the sun is out, so I'm happy. But if it rained today and I had to have my picnic in the rain, the left brain would be unhappy. So the emotion of character 2 is based on the past, my preconceived notion of what I want the future to be. It is a perfectionist, and it's not necessarily our nicest part. This is the part that can be mean to others. It can blame others. It doesn't want to take responsibility for itself or other behaviors. It can be a bully. It can also, deep inside of here, is what we call the insular cortex. And if I take this brain apart in that left hemisphere, that insular cortex is where our craving happens. So my addiction, my craving for any addiction that I have is part of that character 2. And what that means is that if that's the part of my brain that is addicted, then that little character 2 has to participate in the recovery process, or I'll probably have a relapse. So character 2 is our, kind of our unhealthy traumatized person from pain from the past. Character 3
before we get to character 3, I just wanted to ask you, because this again was something that fascinated me when I was reading your book, and thinking about the fact that language being seen on the left-hand side of the brain, and there are people who, when we read books about self-consciousness, where there is a debate about the necessity for language, and you having experienced the loss of that, but I just wondered how that's changed your sense of what makes human self-consciousness, what is required to have that experience of the world.
Which experience exactly?
The experience of being a self-conscious entity when language itself is removed. And I presume that somewhere, even though you write so beautifully about the experience, I imagine as you were going through that experience, you were not able to hear that inner voice.
Exactly. So, but the voice is just one form of thinking. Thinking in language is only one form of thought. Thinking kinesthetically in the body is another form of thought, because we're gaining so much information about our body as it relates to space. And so there are different forms of language inside of the brain, with verbiage only being one of them. So I still was conscious. I always love it when people say, well, she had no left brain. She was, unconscious. She was brain damaged and unconscious. I just have to laugh, because it's like, oh my gosh, are you serious? Are we really that far behind in acknowledging what consciousness is? The way I look at it, let me keep going and I'll come back to this. Okay. So character 3 is the emotion. This is the machine, the right here, right now, present moment, right hemisphere. So it's easy to remember, right here, right now, right hemisphere. So we have emotions in the present moment, right here, right now. And it's experiential. What does it feel like? I'm on a lake. I got Hurricane Ida starting to blow her humidity up here. I'm sweating, the weight of the clothing on my body. What is the experience of the present moment? This is also the adrenaline junkie. It wants to, go do something really exciting. What does it feel like as I swim through the water and I feel the pressure on my body and the temperature of the water versus the temperature of the air? So this is likes to go, do. It's very playful. It's very creative, because it's not defining the societal norm of what is right, what is wrong, what is good, and what is bad. So it thinks out of the box. As a result, it's innovative. It's creative, it's interested, and because it doesn't have the ego, it likes to play with others, because we're all one big energy ball together, one big human family, and it's more fun to go sometimes just to go do it with somebody else, right? So the experience of the present moment and then the thinking of the present moment is the part of the consciousness that is completely in the right here, right now. And right here, right now is a perfect moment without the judgment of what is right or wrong or good or bad about it. It just is what it is. And there's this incredible sense of gratitude that exists in that character 4 right thinking tissue that I exist at all. Oh my gosh, Robin, I have a voice and I can communicate with you. I have eyes and I can see you. I have legs and arms that allow me to move the mass of this organic collection of cells into the world. Oh my gosh, I'm alive. And just that experience of I'm alive, it's a phenomenon I'm grateful for. I have no idea about all these other things that pile on top and make the noise of my existence. But right here, right now is a perfect moment that we can always tap into. And then in the character 3, it's more of the, okay, what do I do in the present moment? And then character 2 comes in, and what do I feel about all the past? Give me a reason to push it away and say no. And then character 1 isn't even in the present right here. It's in some external world. I mean, so these are the noisy parts of our brain. And so when people said, oh, well, she's brain damaged, she's lost her left hemisphere, she's not conscious. And I am probably more conscious than I have ever been in the purity of what consciousness truly is. Now, did I know my name? No. Did I care? No. Why would I care? I lost my color scheme that I used to like to dress in. I was always red, white, and black. Now I do some blues and some greens. I'm in black today, but I got a colorful brain, but all that right, wrong, good, bad, I lost. What I lost was the communal consciousness of societal's norm, but I still value the life that I had. And I was probably a more aware and experiencing the present moment in 1,000% compared to when I had my left brain. And then in order to recover the left brain meant, oh my God, I got to step out of the blissful euphoria of the present moment and go back into the pain and go back into the analytical left brain consciousness that is anywhere other than right here, right now, and start processing facts and details again. Wow. So for me, that was kind of a sacrifice. But I have to be whole brain in order to exist in this world as a whole brain person. And that's the point of all this new material.
See, so that one of the things that I find remarkable is the idea as we break down and place these personalities on either side of the brain, that we are funneled out as a single person still seems to me that idea that we are a multitude, and then we come out and we just go, this is me and these are my faults and I shouldn't have done, and we become sometimes damaging. So and other ways, though there's no other way it seems to go through society apart from to go, all of these voices come together as a single person. And that change your attitude towards that, again, having had the experience you've had.
Yeah, well, for me, I mean, after I gave that TED talk, I ended the TED talk by saying we have the power to choose moment by moment who and how we want to be in the world. And I had over 300,000 people write to me and say, well, you had a stroke, you lost the personality of your left brain, you came into the present moment. How do I get to the present moment and find that blissful euphoria without having to have a stroke? And it took 13 years for me to answer that question, because I went from the right brain to recover the skills of the left brain, because I have to have individuation if I'm going to be a productive human being. I have to be able to organize details and facts and regain those skills. And then, of course, I want to have an emotional experience and have a past emotion and be a whole person again. So I didn't know until I was giving a presentation at a conference. And I said, I love presenting in this day and age about the brain because, 30 years ago, people didn't want to hear the brain. They'd look down around and they'd look down and it's like, oh, don't call on me. But I was asking people for brains for Harvard at the time. So I guess that makes a little sense. So, but I said, people even know the language, the amygdala and the hippocampus. But the fact of the matter is we have 2 amygdala and we have 2 hippocampi. And there was literally a gasp in the room. And I realized in that instant, that's how I communicated. That's how I help a normal person understand there's 4 of us inside of any head. And as you mentioned before, those 4 happen to fall completely on Carl Jung's 4 archetypes. And no wonder he came up with the 4 archetypes, because they are neuroanatomically structured inside of our human brain. And some of us are dominant as that character 1 left thinking. Some of us are dominant, or we can tap into that emotion and pain from the past, and that we hear that pain from the past, and we get hooked into our trauma and into our addiction. Some of us are just very in the right here, right now experiential, and then which is the anima animus for Carl Jung's archetypes. And then the character 4 would be defined as the true self, because it's not all that other noise. It's kind of like what people call that authentic self. So for Carl Jung, number 1 is going to be the ego. Number 2 is going to be the shadow. Number 3 will be the anima animus, which, as I mentioned, doesn't have me, the individual. So that's the androgynous me. That's both the male and the female. And then the true self being that character 4. And, it's what we are biologically. And to get to know each of those 4 characters and then to navigate a relationship between them, how does your character 1 feel about your character 3? Does it value when you go out and play and you take a pause for work? Or does it think that you're just a big waste of time? And if the characters don't have respect for one another and communicate with one another, then you're going to have a lot of internal conflict. And that's just not, that's not no way to live a life, is, at war with yourself about everything.